Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Back for another week.
And our third member of the tripod, Tom. For the first time in a while, he's in the same state as us, but we're still doing the show without him, which feels like a bit of a slap in the face.
Chosen to exclude him deliberately.
Yeah, literally. He's like, yeah, we could do it when I get home. I was like, nah. I'd rather do it early.
So for those who are not in the know, Tom had his Bucks party last night, and so if you hear any residual seediness on our parts, that might be what it is. As someone who has a 6-month-old baby, it might be the first like proper outing that I've had in a while, and I think I might be like slightly shell shocked from all that. No, not hungover. I only had like 3 or 4 beers,
right?
But like shell shocked from all the social contact. Like it was quite jarring. I got home. And so it was, and it took me like I was like an hour on the train to like decompress, and I got home and I was still buzzing. I got home at like 1:15. I didn't sleep till like 3 o'clock in the morning because I was just like, like my brain was just fizzing with social contact, which I'm not used to.
That's great. You gotta get out there and do it, man.
For sleep, but
no, it's horrible for your sleep. The trick is you just gotta drink enough to start falling asleep at the table, which is what I was doing. Yeah. And then you get home and then you're ready to go to bed.
Well, I mean, what with my recent diagnosis of ADHD from one of our friends, I mean, it's hardly surprising. So I was diagnosed by a professional.
Is it mental health?
Unrequested, by the way. Unrequested diagnosis. I was told.
These were the kind of chats we were having at midnight, getting donuts on Flinders Street.
Yeah, that's the place.
You've definitely got. I was like, okay,
fucking believe me. Okay,
this is where we need to.
Oh, watch out! I just got hot jam all over your leg. This is definitely the place for a mental health diagnosis. Is on Elizabeth Street at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes. And if our friend is listening, we love you. But it was a very weird conversation.
No, we love you. So yeah,
news.
Oh, how can I possibly keep track of it with my disease-addled ADHD brain? How can I possibly keep it straight?
Stop that.
Okay.
You have a system set up. It's called
I do have a system. I got reminders. I got a run sheet. I keep my keys clipped to my bag. I'm very organized. I don't need any additional.
Yeah.
We
should clarify here that like we're not having a go at people with ADHD. It's just a weird conversation.
People with ADHD. I was accused.
It was just a weird conversation
on the street at 1 a.m. in the morning.
12 a.m. Let's get precise. Anyway, first story this week is from the United States, and it concerns a whistleblower for Boeing, whose name is John Barnett, who was scheduled the next little while to give evidence at a trial concerning various like Boeing safety issues. And on Sunday evening in Melbourne last week, it came that we got the ABC, who had interviewed John before. I got a call saying that he was now deceased and he'd passed away. What has imploded the internet is perhaps the circumstances around his death, in which he was found in a car at a hotel, in his truck at a hotel or outside a hotel, with a alleged self-inflicted gunshot wound. Yeah.
So it's so funny because the conspiracy internet has gone wild over this. They're like,
it's gone bananas.
Absolutely didn't, like Epstein didn't kill himself kind of thing. And it's like, the guy was scheduled to go into his third day of, I think it was depositions before a trial was meant to start later on, in the next couple of months. And so this guy has been a whistleblower on Boeing. He worked at Boeing for about 3 decades, and has talked very publicly for a number of years about flaws in their manufacturing process where, scrap metal and scrap parts were being used and reused in order to meet tight deadlines, and safety precautions were sort of being ignored in order to maintain, delivery schedules and things like that. And so given the recent issues that Boeing in particular has had with the doors getting blown off that Boeing jet recently because they just didn't put a bunch of bolts in it and things like that. Obviously this is an issue of increased salience at the moment. And then the internet's very skeptical around the circumstances of his death. Now, they haven't confirmed that it was a suicide. I guess a coroner still needs to look into that. But then the ABC even putting together an article about it. Even the ABC's seems sus. That's why we're talking about it. Seems real sus that he was talking about all this stuff about Boeing and they're about to go to trial and this guy was about to get his day in court and then all of a sudden he dies. Now, I totally see how if you are struggling with mental health issues, if you've been sort of persecuted and you've been going through, ongoing protracted legal battles with a multi-billion-dollar entity, I could see the stress of a situation like that getting to a person. I don't think it's entirely impossible that something, like a suicide occurred, but the internet's there is no fucking possible way whatsoever that someone going through an experience like this would want to kill themselves. Everyone seems very certain, and I think life is much messier than people are giving it credit for. But even the ABC's don't know, just asking questions.
Well, one of the things that they were saying that he was, while he was under a lot of pressure, so there's definitely, reason to to see that there would have been some stresses involved in his life. He had things like PTSD and other issues as well. But he did say, I think at one point to the ABC, I think last year, or to his lawyer, or one of the two, I've lost the spot in the article, but that he was feeling, pretty excited and energized by the whole sort of thing and was looking forward to sort of having his day in court, so to speak. But yeah, it's it's early days. We don't have a whole lot of things but to sort of say about it, I guess, other than that's happened. But yeah, Boeing is still under fire, for various quality standards. There are, as George said, very recently, the door fell off the plane that was, I think, en route to Alaska or something. And obviously the 737 MAX debacle from a few years ago is also a thing that's still sort of haunting the airline. Now, Boeing themselves have said, of course, that they've been doing safety stand downs at factories, and they've sort of turned a corner, so to speak, in terms of trying to resolve these issues. But as to what's actually happening on the ground, it's hard to say, I guess.
It doesn't inspire confidence when when all those things are going on in the background, and then recently Boeing announced windfalls and decided to do stock buybacks with their windfalls rather than putting the money into additional health and safety. Things like John Oliver on Last Week Tonight had a really great breakdown on Boeing recently and the complicated history that's happened there over the last couple of decades. And it's pretty enlightening to see. It's exactly what we talked about on the show previously, right? That quarterly executive brain where they're just the numbers got to go up and to the right ad infinitum. And there's no other possible way of organizing a company other than to maximize shareholder value on the shortest possible timeline possible. And it's well, when you do that might be fine if you're flipping fucking burgers or whatever. But when you're a Skybus, when you're ferrying hundreds, thousands of people at a time around in the air, you kind of quality control is a little bit more important there than it is at McDonald's.
The quote from we'll speak about McDonald's in a minute, but or towards the end of the show. But my words aren't working because I'm hungover. John Barnett's lawyer, Brian Knowles, actually had this quote. He said, these guys weren't putting together kitchen tables.
Yes, exactly.
Safety and quality in aviation is something that should be taken very seriously. And they are incredibly complex machines. Compared to the planes, that were in the air 60 years ago, these things are computers that are flying, basically. So John Barnett worked on the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. That is actually the same model of a plane that was involved in an incident this week on a flight between Sydney and Auckland. I'm not sure what that incident was. a technical fault that caused. That's right. Yeah. So the aircraft dropped suddenly, and a bunch of people were injured.
I heard about this. It was like a stewardess accidentally hit a button on the back of the pilot's chair, and it like pushed him forward into the joystick, like pushed the joystick down. I was like, how is that a button? That's
allegedly
that you're allowed to access. Yeah. I feel like that's the sort of button that should have a cap over it, like in the movies.
So the plane literally went like that.
Whoops.
Oops. So yeah. I mean, that may not be the end of the world with safety, but I mean...
Well, it's the end of the world if you're flying over a mountain or trying to land the thing.
Yeah. A 787, they're probably like a lot of airlines are switching to the 787 Dreamliner now and sort of getting rid of their older aircraft. Like a lot of airlines are transitioning from like the larger like 747s and the A380s and going to smaller, like medium-sized aircraft, so that things like the 787 Dreamliner, because they're more fuel efficient, and to make profit on one of those bigger planes, you kind of have to fill half of it, and it's kind of hard to get sometimes the tickets bought. Doesn't stop them cancelling flights though, but anyway, it's a whole other story.
I think that's a Qantas problem, not a Boeing problem.
My partner got her flight from the Gold Coast got cancelled today, so she's not getting back till like
cool
12 a.m. tonight.
I might leave it to Tom to tell the story, but yeah, he told us a ripper of a story yesterday about him coming down to Melbourne and the flight that he was on being cancelled, and then they put him on an earlier flight, but they notified him at 4 a.m. in the morning for a 6 a.m. for an 8 a.m. flight as opposed to a 9 a.m. flight. And I was just like it didn't even happen to me, but I had like secondhand rage at Virgin Airlines.
That's what happened. So Tom had to get, so if he hadn't seen that notification, he could have
he woke up at 6, like ready to get there in heaps of time for his 9 a.m. flight. And there was like, bum, 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 bum. It's like a movie montage of him having to like throw on his shirt and run out the door to get there on time for a fucking 8 a.m. flight.
Home Alone. It's like, we did it! That would make me
furious,
want to murder someone. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, like John Barnett has talked about, it's not just like a 737 Max problem that the company was having. It was a manufacturing problem. It was a quality and safety, a culture of safety which was not being respected and adhered to, and which is a shame, because like Boeing's history as a company, Boeing was the brand that everyone was like, oh, you want something safe, like you fly Boeing. And so to go from that level of like safety and security to where it is now, it's a cheapening of the brand. The thing is though, is because aviation's such a complex, consolidated industry, there's this weird thing where it's like, yeah, everyone's down on Boeing at the moment, but the only other solution is Airbus and buying from China. And so, and it's not like planes you can just like order, like, oh, give us 24 planes like next week. Like these are very long purchasing, buying, manufacturing cycles. So it's like, even if everyone wanted to stop using Boeing tomorrow, Airbus, their competitor, largest competitor over in China, would not have the capacity to take on all of the orders that would otherwise be going to Boeing. So it's kind of like this weird thing of like, yeah, Boeing's doing really bad right now, and everyone's just going to like be forced to keep buying Boeing planes because what's the alternative?
I mean, there are other manufacturers, but it's about scale. Like if you're Qantas, say the major Australian
if you need 10 planes.
If you need... dozens probably, and we've discussed this. Qantas's fleet is old. They're going to have to replace a whole shitload of planes, like 20 to 30 planes, probably more. But yeah, that's a decade-long project to have that sort of, and you've got to have a company that has the pipeline, that has the manufacturing resources to be able to do it. And you can get smaller planes, you can get Embraers and other different types of smaller jets, but to get if you want some bigger ones, there are literally, as George said, like 1 or 2 manufacturers in the world that can do that and deliver them at scale.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see what happens with his, I guess the investigation in the US. We should also call out as well that obviously if you or anyone needs help, You can call Lifeline on 131114. You can go to the suicide callback service on 1300 659 467. Beyond Blue 1300 224 636. And there are another bunch of organisations. If you know them, reach out to them as well. Our next story this week is it's a weirdly good news story, and I'm confused.
We're allowed.
Are we allowed to have a good news story?
We can have a good news story. Yeah, it's not in the charter that we can't have a good news story.
I was shook by this, George. I was absolutely shook by it because I did not expect it to be as to the outcome to be what it was. And the outcome in this case here is that the Australian Fair Work Commission has basically approved it's been a years-long sort of fight for aged care workers to have a wage rise of up to 28.5% for the entire sector. So again, aged care workers, and depending on what your role is within aged care, so nurses will get different rates, for instance, like cleaners and stuff, that kind of thing. If you've already had a pay rise, you'll get less than, if someone who hasn't had a pay rise. So there's different things within it. But if you're someone who hasn't had a pay rise and you are a nurse, you would get up to 28.5% in terms of your increase in terms of the base award level.
The question that I had was over what period of time, though? Because is this like phased in over several years, or is this like an immediate kind of an effect kind of thing? I'm not sure. But here's a representative from the union talking to a bunch of assembled aged care workers and various people and their families.
For personal carers, there's an increase range between 18 and 28%. Home care between 15 and 26%. And there is certainly more to do. There's a 6.8% increase for support services, and there's more to do there, and we will be doing more about that. This is quite amazing. Let me put it in real terms. We often speak about the amount of women who work in aged care, who predominantly work in aged care. We talk about superannuation balances, average superannuation balances of $18,000. It's a disgrace. What this will do now, and here is just one figure, a personal carer will go from $23.10 to $32.52. That going forward now makes aged care competitive with the public health system.
And that's probably the key thing there. So there was a Royal Commission into aged care a couple of years ago, and one of the key findings was that they needed to drastically increase wages to basically retain staff, because one of the key problems with the sector is that they churn through staff like it's going out of fashion, and the ones that are there are sort of underqualified and inexperienced.
Yeah,
so
highly reliant on migrant labour as well, compared to other industries, really happy to sort of take people, use them up for a couple of years, chew them up, spit them out. The jobs that Australians don't want to do because they are really hard jobs, and basically relying on, essentially exploited labour. Like, I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah. So the fact, that's a pretty drastic increase. My understanding is this will come in pretty quickly in terms of the pay increase. I don't think it's I think if it was staged, they would have said that it would be staged. It might take a few months for it to come into effect, but I think it's an immediate sort of increase in terms of like when it hits, it'll hit. What I'm also not sure, this is the I guess the sector. We're talking about the award, the written in legislation, the wage that people are entitled to. I don't know how it affects like private aged care facilities. I don't. So I'm assuming this will be mostly government-run facilities that will be subject to this.
Well, if it's based on an award system sets the minimum threshold for what people are allowed to be paid at various levels of experience, right? So that would have flow-on effects through to the private sector. Now, if the private sector is compensating people at rates that are higher than the award wages, then things aren't going to change. But if they're paying minimum wage, then it would apply not just to the public sector, but to the private sector as well.
It will affect, according to the ABC, the decision will affect more than 200,000 residential and home care workers. So it is also people that would probably do, as he said, personal carers. So that would probably apply to like home visits and that kind of thing as well, I'd imagine. I'm not sure. One question I had was more who's paying for it. I'm assuming it's the taxpayer.
If it's a public system, then the taxpayer. If it's a private system, then it's private businesses. Just a new threshold for the minimum wage, right?
But like I'd much rather put my tax dollars to this than
100%
certain other things that we're paying for in the AR taxes.
Let's deduct one submarine and let's pay workers fairly instead. How about that? Yeah.
I just good news story. It's weird. I was like, oh, surely they won't give them. It'll be like, they'll give them like 5% or something. The government had actually previously already given them 15%. It's like a stopgap measure.
That just shows how chronically underfunded the sector is in the first place. Like, it's to be giving, like, to be able to, the example he used there of someone going from $23 an hour to $32 an hour. It's like $23 an hour for the kind of work that these people do is monstrous. Like, you could go work at fucking McDonald's for $23 an hour, flipping burgers, not wiping anyone's fucking asshole. Like, you
could doing $23 an hour in like 2012.
Yeah, exactly. And that was before the Cosy Lives apocalypse, where beers are now $17.
Yeah, the beers last night were fucking expensive.
I was getting little teeny tiny little pots.
Oh my god, I spent a lot of money last night. Anyway,
can I have a Whittle Baby beer? And they're like, this is what a pint used to cost 5 years ago for your little teeny tiny beer.
But as I said, everyone in the sector will get an increase. Depending on what your role is, you'll get different rates. But I think it's good, and it'll be interesting to see how this does affect outcomes in the sector. Like, it'll probably take some time to flow through, but money talks.
It is a sector that is in dire need of bodies right now, and the Victorian government is subsidising places in social care and health for this exact reason. They will pay, in many instances, a lot of these programs that help you qualify for this kind of work are free TAFE programs.
Yeah.
So the government will pay your way 100%, no questions asked, provided you're a citizen and that you haven't used one of these, subsidized programs before. Yeah, obviously, terms and conditions may apply. Please seek professional advice. But oftentimes the government will pay for you to go and attend these kinds of social care and health courses in order to qualify for these jobs, because there is such a dearth of talent in the industry. Because, as you say, people just keep cycling through. They get people through. They pay them 20-something bucks an hour. That's like terrible conditions, bad work. It's hard work. It's very emotionally draining work, and people just cycle out of the system. They go, "Fuck this! This is too hard. I can't do this anymore."
And to be fair, those issues, I don't necessarily think. Well, I mean, it may help, but those issues
won't go away. But if you're properly compensated for the work that you're doing, maybe it'll get people to stay longer than they otherwise would. Maybe they can actually build a lifelong career off the back of these kinds of wages rather than what they were getting before. It's not about making it, a fun tech workplace where there's kegs on tap and and things like that. Those kinds of like lifestyle adjustments that office workers get. Like, they're never going to be able to have those kinds of amenities, right? But you can at least make it a less unpleasant place to work, so that the people who have the passion, the people who do this, have a real passion for helping people. You don't do this kind of work because it's like you're going to get rich, because clearly that's not the case. You do it because you want to help people. You feel it deeply in your being somewhere that you want to look after people and care for them. So all this does is allow that to be like a sensible life choice for some people, to allow that passion to like allow you to feed your family. To do and also do this kind of work, because we absolutely need, if you want to have, it's just like simple supply and demand, right? If you create are better paying jobs, then more people will want to do those jobs or stay in them longer, or so
I guess if you've got and if I guess the other aspect is if you are properly resourced, because people are wanting to stay in the jobs for longer, then generally speaking, there are shifts in productivity, there are shifts in consistency, there are shifts in outcomes, because you have a well-resourced organization that can flow through the other areas which are lacking in aged care. Again, like there are organizations that take the piss and serve up, like the residents' food is like
and
bangers and mash,
and people
canned,
cutting corners like that is never okay. I guess what this does is say like there is a minimum amount of resourcing that needs to go, because there are also requirements as to I remember Labor made a commitment that there was going to be a full-time nurse on staff at all of these retirement communities and things like that. Like there are minimum requirements in legislation that say you need to have this level of resourcing, you need to have this many people on the ward, you need to have this level of coverage. And so, you can't cut corners around any of that sort of stuff. Otherwise you get your license taken away. So I think this is to the good. You're never going to stop shoddy business practices and people, taking the piss and trying to, decrease the quality of life of the people they're looking after in order to pocket a bit of extra cash, right? You're always going to have rapacious capitalists. Capitalists going to capitalist, but you can at least regulate it and pump more resources into the system to make that less likely of an eventuality, right?
Yeah. So we'll see. Time will tell. I think Labor's behind on a few of their targets in regards to some of the reports, some of the recommendations. There was an article about it.
Oh no, Labor's behind. Labor's behind on their goals. Whereas the Liberal Party is Scott Morrison appointing himself to various secret ministries. And they're like, Labor's behind on their targets. Oh no.
That was 3-4 years ago, George. We have to move on now, okay? And,
I will never move on. I will be a petty bitch for the rest of my life about that. They're just like, Labor's broken promises. Is like, remember when Scott Morrison said, I don't hold a hose? Do you remember that? I do
remember that. Speaking of broken, this was an absolute travesty. This next story, it was a sad day for many people around the world. The McDonald's, they had a system outage, and it affected restaurants, different countries everywhere. And what it sort of, for some reason, their point of sale system, their payment system just fucking died for hours and hours and hours across the world.
They described it as a global IT outage.
And notably, it was not caused by a cybersecurity event. Tom, our resident sort of IT
techie
expert, and he called this last time when it was the
Optus.
This is the Optus thing, and he's like, they put through a patch into production before testing it properly, and that was correct. And
this is why you never push. This is why you never push stuff into prod without testing it. This is why we have the sandbox environment, is so you can test things before they go live.
It's probably, I mean, Tom's theory, it's probably a patch that was broken, and I would look. If it's not a cybersecurity event, that sounds probably the only thing.
Well, what else could it be? They seem very sure that it wasn't a cybersecurity event. So,
but the thing that they say that now, and then they'll go back and do a review of the logs. And go,
actually.
But the thing that shocked me was that I didn't realize this, but the McDonald's point of sale system is a global piece of software that everything is tied in. I thought it was localized, what Japan's running their own thing, Australia's got their own thing, America's got their own thing. I didn't realize it was all tied together. I guess running the same software.
They've got different geographical versions of the same sort of production environment. They've got an Asia Pacific version. They've got, but it's all based on the same underlying software.
But it all uses the same servers as well. That's the thing. Well, they're all plugged in. Their servers went down.
Everything's gone down at the same time. So I mean, how am I gonna get my nuggies? You know what I mean? How am I gonna get my bloody my hash browns?
Look, to be fair, I did get home. This is on Friday, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I did get home at 9:00, and I did order Uber Eats McDonald's. Mm-hmm. No, it was DoorDash. and it came and it was fine. Didn't even know about this till the next day. So they obviously resolved the issue. So crisis averted, guys.
You escaped the nuggy apocalypse.
We did escape the nuggy apocalypse, and I managed to get a little, it's like a medium, like double cheeseburger meal with some bacon and a thick shake, and I ate that. Put it in my body.
You put that in your body on purpose, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And then I felt rubbish the next morning, but
I wonder
it was
why.
Delicious. It was fucking amazing.
You're looking.
It might have also been the 4 or 5 beers that I drank, but that's.
You're looking great for the wedding, by the way. Can I just say this new regime that you're on is just really high and tight. Everything's looking really, just elevated. Just like you're just dousing yourself in collagen, like you're just ready to go.
Yes, yeah. No, we did
If
go on a
I
bit
ate
of a
like
diet
you,
and have reacted. No, I was on diet for like 6 weeks.
If I ate for 6 weeks, go fuck yourself.
And then
if I ate like you, I would be dead. I would be a beached whale, someone stepping over me in the gutter, like having a cardiac event. If I had a double bacon fucking cheeseburger and a thick shake, my arteries would close up immediately.
Oh no, you could probably have one.
I eat veggies and my doctor's like, we need to put you on statins, your cholesterol's too high. Like you're a menace, you're a danger to yourself and others.
I don't want to check my cholesterol. That would be a bad time, I think. But
especially after the fucking Baconator cholesterol apocalypse that you just had.
So yeah, look, I mean, as long as the ice cream machine's now working at McDonald's, and we're all good. For reference as well, McDonald's operates about 1,000 restaurants across Australia. So
stop calling them restaurants.
It's restaurants.
Food,
they're a restaurant.
Service locations.
No, they're a restaurant.
Quick service.
Family restaurant.
No.
Yeah, that's what they do. It's play equipment, George. It's a family restaurant.
Yes, as we all know, all fine dining establishments have play equipment.
And obviously, if you don't want to eat all the crap food, you can order a salad.
You can technically order a salad. I'm just surprised that there's no way of like manually processing orders, in a situation where like the internet's down or the power's out. They're just like, sorry.
Do you think it is like one of those things where it's like with certain businesses or modern society, modern corporations, we're becoming, like too plugged in, like. Should there not be as a risk assessment for these sort of?
Where's your redundancies? Where's your racy fucking? Where's your risk matrix?
What's your business continuity procedure?
Yeah.
If this happens, right? And surely the answer is you just get an old fashioned ticket,
bloody pen and paper, or ticket stub.
You write it down, and somehow. You can still take cash. Surely they could still take cash.
Businesses, you go down to your local fish and chippy. That's what they're doing still. Like it just boggles the mind that like there have been times where like the Visa payment network has been out and and it's just like, well, just commerce stops because no one's knows how to like do cash anymore. No one carries cash. No one has cash. And it's just like, well, I guess we can't do economy today.
I mean, to be fair, I haven't had cash in my wallet for like a long time.
I carry an emergency 50 and it's been sitting there for some time. It's quite folded.
Crispy, a little bit folded. Smells a bit of like
it
bum,
does.
Bum
it does
fumes.
smell of bum.
Yeah.
Bum fumes. Yeah. Okay. It's hurtful. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we can't always be the $50 note in George's wallet. So I don't know. Maybe I should. Maybe I should do the same thing and carry some emergency.
A couple
smelly cash.
Couple of gold pieces. Just for the waiting for the collapse. A couple of golden florins or a doubloon or two. You never know.
A brick.
Yeah. Well, bricks are hard because you can't shave them. You know what I mean? You'd have to get a vegetable peeler and a gold brick in order to make that work.
That being said, like you could use a gold brick as well as a murder weapon, like if a self-defense weapon. Sorry,
it's heavy, but it's not very hard as a metal.
You reckon? You could belt someone's head with it.
I mean, you could. Don't.
Anyway,
don't do that.
We're getting way off topic in terms of the future hellscape apocalypse that's probably about to come.
Yeah, I love the idea.
Get that up at the same time.
We have societal collapse, and people are going to be like counting out doubloons in the corner, being like 1, 2. No, it's going to be like Fear the Walking Dead, where everyone's eating each other's faces. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, we partially went through that. Like, you know, the pandemic happened and supermarkets just got fucking cleaned out, and it was like
that's going to be the real
Coles.
The real effect is like all the toilet paper's gone. Like, oh no.
That
was such a weird. I didn't
time.
understand it at the time, and I still don't understand that now. Why everyone was going for the fucking toilet paper? Like, just toilet paper didn't exist until 100, 150 years ago. Wasn't a thing. People were just like, use their hands and then wash them, or like use a towel. Like, there is a perfectly acceptable way of cleaning your body after you poo that is not contingent on the use of paper. But everyone's like, I'm just gonna shit myself to death. I need to get the toilet paper. I must have toilet paper. One of civilization's the last bastion, the wall that's holding back the filthy, the hordes, the great unwashed is the wall of Kleenex that I could put up between myself and them. Just absurd.
Meanwhile, there's like a dozen cultures, or probably more around the world, that are like, have you ever heard of a bidet?
Yeah, just a bidet.
Like,
you just
wash
get
it.
a
Fucking bidet.
It's actually
wash your ass.
If you got poo on your arm and you wiped it off with a tissue, would you feel comfortable with that afterwards?
Yeah. Would you lick it? Would you
lick
that
the state
same
of
spot?
affairs? I wouldn't. I'd like a good wash before I did anything like that.
Yeah. Yes. Can't think of a segue for this one, but our next story is basically a US economist came over here and proved George's theory of the economy correct. But anyway, so the Reserve Bank of Australia invited a US economist, John H. Cochrane, to present a paper at a
Johnny Cochrane
conference. Johnny Cochrane.
If the glove does not fit, you must acquit the economy.
So yeah, apparently the RBA has an annual conference, and this guy's pretty, like, his sort of opinion or stance on the concept of raising interest rates to affect inflation is known. He's written about it before, but yeah, still the ABC sort of posits that it's still a bit of a controversial theory. But he basically, the crux of his argument is that raising raising interest rates to fight inflation without also playing with fiscal policy, the theory that every Western economy uses to, basically rein in inflation, there's not really, by itself, just playing with interest rates. There's no
doesn't really do that much
proof. There's no proof really that is the golden ticket, so to speak.
Being an economist is essentially forecasting what's going to happen with great certainty and then explaining why it didn't happen.
Yeah.
That really seems to be what being an economist is. Like, this is absolutely what's going to happen. And let me tell you why it didn't happen like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like this guy's some schmuck. Like, he's from Stanford University's Hoover Institution. Like, he's a well-respected guy coming from like a respected institution in his field. It's not like this is some crank theory, but yeah, it makes sense. Like, if you've got a bunch of inflation, has to do with the simple explanation is too much money chasing too few goods, right? And if government fiscal policy is still pumping out money into the economy, it's like, yes, lowering your interest rates might help in the short term, but you've still got all these other factors that are playing into inflation that aren't going to be affected by any of that, right? So it's actually the argument that he makes is that it sort of like spreads things out. Like, inflation might come up and down quicker than it otherwise would with Reserve Bank policy, but it's not actually going to affect. It just kind of like spreads things out more, and sort of you're sort of pushing inflation by pushing it down with higher monetary rates. Now you're just kind of like pushing that inflation out and sort of spreading it out over the future timeline, which doesn't necessarily do much of anything. Like, I remember Sean McAuliffe, before his show was finished,
Mad as hell.
Mad as hell, which is fantastic. I miss Mad as hell. But they had a bit about like inflation, and he's saying like, talking about how the Reserve Bank was increasing interest rates to combat inflation. He goes, but like, doesn't the higher prices prevent people from spending as much money as like don't the higher prices in and of themselves curb inflation? Like, isn't that the natural response? Like, the price goes up, you can afford to buy less things, and then it like kind of peters out at some point. It's just like, hey, that's an interesting point.
Not if you're Argentina or Haiti or
but you talk about
Zimbabwe,
those cases where there's been hyperinflation. It's because yes, there was no real fiscal policy, but the government was also just doing whatever the fuck they wanted and throwing good money after the bad, paying down debts with their own currency and all that sort of stuff. Like, it was real financial mismanagement on the behalf of those countries, not just like letting things play out. It was corrupt leaders doing bad shit with the country's money, right? So,
I mean, I guess the point, the reason why this is probably, I mean, it still makes sense. Like, the economy doesn't exist in a vacuum. There are many different levers. I guess why this is interesting is that he was invited to speak by the RBA. The RBA, the only tool they have to really do anything is interest rates. It's the government that pulls all the other levers of fiscal policy. So,
and most of the inflation we heard, and I remember we talked about a couple of weeks ago, in the last reporting period, was driven by business investment and government spending. It wasn't driven by consumer spending. It was driven by other factors. So why does raising interest rates on consumers, why is that the only tool? And B, like, is there evidence that it's actually working? It doesn't seem like it.
There is, I would say that, like, I mean, his opinion is that there is, how did he term it in his first quote here? It is not settled whether and how, by raising interest rates without a change in fiscal policy, the central bank can temporarily lower inflation.
Yeah. Which is like, but it's also a global problem, right? Like, we've seen inflation go up in different levels and to different extremes in a bunch of different countries around the world following the post-COVID period. And then we've seen it starting to moderate in quite a few countries around the world, all of which have different fiscal policies, different government spending policies, different. It's like it is.
All of them would have higher interest rates,
not
because they don't be doing the same
not to the same degree. So it's kind of like we've gone through a global event, which has had this bullwhipping kind of effect throughout the global economy. And then each country is individually patting themselves on the back for, like, well done us for getting inflation under control. But it's like, meanwhile, every government is having more or less the same experience where inflation is coming down. So it's like we kind of all been doing the exact same things well and correctly. Like, it's just a global phenomenon that's come and is passing.
Not necessarily. There was an interesting report out by the Human Index, the guys who do the Human Improvement Index or whatever it's called, the other day, but from the UN. And what they've noted is that while Western, like G20, those kind of countries, well-developed countries, have recovered effectively from the COVID sort of era, those less developed economies are actually not recovering. And what that means is the index in terms of inequality in the world is growing. And that's the first time it's done that in decades.
A couple of decades.
Generally speaking, and look, there are externalities where there are several large conflicts happening in the world at the moment.
I was going to say, what else is going on, right? Like, it's not just as simple, as things get better in a straight line all the time. Like,
in West Africa, they're throwing coups after coups. The Congo is,
I like you say, throwing coups like it's a bachelor party.
Anyway, obviously Ukraine. So there's, within all that, there are various sanctions. People are trying to divest from China, but while also still trying to increase business with China. Like, it's a different. So we're in a circumstance.
I think you're proving
where
my
there's a lot
point.
Of interruptions. What's your point?
The point is that the global economy is incredibly complicated.
Oh, it's connected, yeah.
And everything's connected, and it's really less to do with any one government's individual raising of a 25 basis points of an interest rate, and more to do with the underlying fundamentals of what's happening in terms of government spending and consumer spending and how much people have got saved and what's happening overseas and like oil prices. I think oil prices have much more to do with our inflation that we're dealing with at home than anything the RBA can do on a day-to-day basis. And that can swing wildly.
So you've got the Red Sea basically being shut down now because of the Houthis. So you're shooting missiles everywhere. So there's more extra transport costs. The Ukrainians are just going around blowing up Russian oil refineries at the moment, like it's bloody, fucking firework day or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, whether or not. This is the other weird thing is that like Russia is pretty well disconnected at the moment from other parts of the global economy. So, if you're in Australia, we're probably not getting Russian oil, but it still affects the oil price because the oil price,
exactly. Because it's a global commodity. If they're selling more to India and other countries that are adjacent to them that aren't part of these sanctions, and then India is buying less from Australia as a result because they're getting this cheap discounted Russian oil. Yeah. Well, it's fungible, right? Like the global commodity, the global commodity price plays into all of that, right?
Oil is something and in Australia,
and we have no control over that.
We don't have control of that. We just have to suck it up, and then fuel price goes up, and then that affects inflation, right?
But who needs to pay the price? These elder millennial households that have just borrowed $600,000 to $800,000 and at their peak point in their borrowing cycle, those are the people who need to pay. It's not the Ukrainians, it's not the Russians, it's people with one income and a kid. Those are the people that need to pay. That's the way we're going to get this economy back on track, is by punishing those people.
Speaking from personal experience there, George, there's some sort of
who could possibly? No, I couldn't possibly comment.
I mean, look, and we saw this, in when COVID happened, like global timber supply stopped.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden building prices went up internationally.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened was shipping containers were the whole shipping container system collapsed.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get, stuff from A to B, and that affected everything. Some of those issues, like that's an example of that's an inflationary thing that you can't control. You can't control.
None of that's in control of Australia.
You can't control the ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal sideways. No one can fucking predict that.
No.
We are global. But I would say that this isn't proof to just throw out the concept of interest rate.
I think it's useful, but I guess the way it gets talked about is so as though it is the only determinative factor. It's like, listen, kids, let's gather around the economist here by the fire, and he's going to tell you how the economy works. When capital's readily available, people go out and spend more money. When capital is more expensive, people spend less money. It's like, whilst that is broadly true on the broad strokes, it makes it sound like the economy is like a single guy holding a lever at various lengths, when it's that is one lever of 1,000 different levers, most of which are outside of their control.
I wonder though whether it is, it's really just the media painting it like that, as opposed to it the reason why we focus so much on this is because the media, it's a news story. Are they going to raise interest rates? Are they not going to raise interest rates? What will that mean for your mortgage? I'm sure there are discussions either at the RBA or within the government, within Treasury or whatever, that are looking at a much more complicated picture than the ABC's, 400 words.
But the reason they're focused on it like that is because people's mortgage payments are the determinative factor most of the time as to whether they have money left at the end of the month or not.
Yeah.
If my mortgage is $2,500 a month as opposed to $3,600 a month, and I'm making a fixed amount of income because my income doesn't change just because the interest rate goes up, well, that can be the difference between making money and saving money or going backwards and spending more than you're making, right? So
which is why it's a news story.
That's why it's a news story, because that's how it affects most people who own houses and how much money they have in their pocket every month. If there was a tax change of that magnitude, it would be non-stop. It'd be everything that everyone would be talking about. Or you're getting taxed an extra 12, 13 grand a year. That would be a huge news story.
My point being though is the reason why we focus on it. We focus on it as in the news, at the exclusion of what's happening with population. The other details that are there that affect this, I mean, they're talked about. The AFR will have, an article about it. The ABC will have an article about it. The Guardian will have an opinion piece. But it's not front page of the Herald Sun.
It's a complicated story to shout on the front page of the Herald Sun.
Yeah.
So if you want that kind of analysis, you go to Bloomberg, you go to the AFR, you go to the sort of economics reporter, you sort of read Michael Jander and those sorts of guys who report deeply on this sort of stuff. But
there's knowledge out there. But look, my point being is everyone focuses on the interest rate number because that's what directly affects them. And so to some extent, our understanding of the economy as a general populace just becomes predicated on that number, right?
It's also like, I don't think it's also to do with how quickly things are changing in the space. If you've got 13 rate rises in the space of 15 months or whatever it was, that is much more of a dramatic news story than interest rate rises or decreases when we were kids growing up, because you'd have a shift of maybe a percentage point over the course of a year, and it might go up a little bit and it might go down a little bit. It wasn't as dramatic of a change as it is now, because we're dealing with these large scale issues like COVID. It's the very flat interest rates to offset the impending economic disaster, and then dramatically increasing rates over the course of a year and a half to try and offset the inflation disaster that's coming. Like, I think the reason it's such a focus is because of how hard it's bullwhipping. We weren't as focused on interest rates in the 90s, even though they were probably equivalently high, because people hadn't borrowed as much as they have now, so it wasn't affecting them as much because house prices weren't $1 million for a shack 35 kilometers from the city.
No.
So it affected you less because you didn't have as much. If you've borrowed 300 grand and the interest rate is 6% as opposed to 5%, like, it matters a little bit, but it's not going to change your life. Whereas if you've got $800,000 borrowed and you've got a 6% interest rate as opposed to a 4% interest rate, well, that's like the difference of $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so, the relative terms are very different to what they were back then.
Because housing's so expensive, because things are changing so quickly, because it's more visible, like, there's a lot of reasons why we're more focused on it. And it's complicated. Economics reporting is complicated. Like, I've got an MBA, and I still find myself having to go out of my way to read things, and there's terminology that I don't understand that I need to then look up and define to understand how that fits into what we're talking about here. Like, it is a very complicated area, and to expect the Australian public to grok this while dealing with, two little kids and, putting dinner on the table and doing the washing and all that sort of stuff, I think is a bit tall of an ask. Most people don't care. Like, they care in terms of that it affects them and that their bills are higher, but no one's going to do the work to understand, read through a 30-page white paper from the RBA to understand why it's happening or what these things mean.
My point is more that maybe we should, as a populace, read the various other shorter resources that are available rather than just looking at the immediacy of it. But anyway.
So your advice, let me just get this straight.
Yeah.
So your advice to the Australian populace is to read more.
Yeah.
And have longer attention spans.
Yes.
Good luck with that.
But speaking of attention spans, our last story this week was, I don't even know how to fucking describe this, but I like space stuff. Okay. All right. I like space stuff. And as part of that space stuff, SpaceX, the company who's founded by Elon Musk or whatever.
Or Elon Mollusk.
Elon Mollusk. So basically they had a flight test the other week of their new rocket. It's called Starship, if you haven't heard about it. And it's the biggest rocket ever built. And so the previous two iterations of it sort of blew up. This is the first time they've sort of got it mostly to the way to space, and they achieved several objectives. Now, they generally speaking will live stream the launch, which is really cool, right? They've stopped doing it on YouTube now, and they do it on, I think, Twitter because it's like.
Because it's an
X-branded thing. Yeah. But I still like to watch things on YouTube. So I was looking around for a live stream, and there are several other live streams, like providers, that will stream the launch.
So like a third party YouTube channel, kind of like
Yeah.
restreaming what's coming from SpaceX kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll have their own analysis. They're, guys that are pretty smart. But I was looking for one that was like, probably the actual SpaceX thing. So I just typed in SpaceX and I found a feed called a channel called SpaceX, and it had a bunch of videos on there. I'd actually watched some of these videos before, so I was like, oh, okay, so obviously this must be the SpaceX.
Yeah.
And I sent it to the guys, sent it to George, sent it to Tom, and I was like, hey, they're going to launch this rocket at about 10 o'clock if you're interested. The flight got pushed back a few times. And anyway, so one of the countdown sort of kept resetting, but eventually it got to sort of like 45 minutes. And I was like, the stream that I'd sort of sent to the guys, I started watching it, and I was like 30 minutes to go, and they were playing like this automated video with like an AI sort of. It
was kind of like a looped video talking about some of the shuttles and how much they weighed and the technology, and I was like, oh, it seems kind of like cheesy sort of American stuff.
Like this is a bit cheap, because normally they do it, but anyway, eventually they cut to what appeared to be a live. Like a live, broadcast from the staff at SpaceX, and they had the SpaceX staff there who have done previous launches. What was weird though was there was a couple of points where they said, "Yeah, this is the second launch of Starship." I was like, "I'm pretty sure it's the third," but I looked down at the video and it said they had the right flight at IFT-3, so they'd updated the text. I was like, maybe the person just made a mistake when they were reading it. Anyway. And then it was counting down, and they had the picture of the rocket there. I was like, great, okay, it's happening. And then it smashed, with like 10 seconds to go, it smash cut to Elon Musk giving a speech with a QR code appearing on the screen.
Saying,
George will play the clip.
Yeah, I'll play the clip. So essentially it's a lot of shots of Elon Musk, like from a distance, so you can't really see his mouth moving and if it's lining up with what he's saying. And then there's audio, which sounds kind of like Elon Musk extolling the value of a cryptocurrency scam. Now, on the video that we post, I'm going to blur out this QR code because it's obvious to me that this is a scam. But so don't go and don't do the things that fake Elon Musk is about to tell you to do. But I just thought it'd be interesting for people to hear. This is where sort of deep fakes are going. So have a listen.
Significant stride in that direction. So join us on this thrilling journey towards both financial prosperity and cosmic discovery. Engage in our Bitcoin giveaway, and let's together pave the way for a future where possibilities abound for all. This isn't merely about distributing digital currency, it's about empowering you to double your investment through Bitcoin. Imagine the thrill of seeing your investment multiply as our rocket propels toward the stars. Participating in this groundbreaking initiative is simple and accessible to all. Just scan the QR code displayed on your screen, navigate to our website, and transfer any amount in Bitcoin. And in return, you'll receive double the amount deposited into your Bitcoin wallet. This initiative epitomizes our commitment to democratizing access to space exploration while showcasing the transformative potential of cryptocurrencies and reshaping the financial landscape. We believe in making financial empowerment inclusive for all empowerment.
Inclusive.
You get the idea. There we go. So obviously the stream I was watching was a massive fake.
It was a scam. It was a cryptocurrency scam.
It was a cryptocurrency scam. And they were using footage, I think, from the second launch, and they'd just updated the text on the bottom. And of course, they launched around the same time. So while the daylight was slightly different,
because it is Elon Musk, you're sort of listening to it going like, oh, maybe he's like voice. Like it's a pretty, like not a bad deep fake, other than like, words like initiative and things like that, where it's like kind of a little bit slurred. Like it sounded.
It has his intonation as well. Like he speaks sort of like that.
Well, there's public programs that you can access now, which basically with, I think it's something like 30 seconds of someone's voice, they can replicate their their manner of speaking, and obviously Elon Musk is a very public figure with hours, dozens of hours of content,
lots of content
of him speaking and saying dumb shit on the internet. So it wouldn't be hard to source that voice.
Yeah.
So,
but what's crazy? So we obviously realized it was a scam, and we went over and watched a live stream somewhere else, and they'd actually pushed the launch back, and it was at a different time. And anyway,
it was like 12:30 at that point. I was just like, I'm going to bed. I can't.
I've just looked up SpaceX again to see sort of what these channels. So what it was the name of the channel is SpaceX, but the actual channel like link is like SpaceX 034. I've now Googled SpaceX again, and there are still live streams up with different like handles, so SpaceX _IFT, with several videos which people apparently are watching at the moment, like 13,000, 12,000, 12,000, which are all this scam, same thing, crypto scams.
Yeah, and I don't even understand like what the scam is. They're like, send us crypto and then we'll send you double in order to like enhance space flight. I was just kind of like, what the fuck?
It's crazy. And like, if you look at the videos, again, on this channel, I can see all the other videos, but I think what they've done is, because in YouTube, you can grab other people's videos and you can add them to your channel as though it's your own. So if I click on this, which is a video I've watched, so all they've done is, I've watched this video before, but they've just linked the actual SpaceX video and put it under their own
page. God, that's like quite sophisticated. And because it's like cryptocurrency as well, you sort of go, oh, maybe Elon's talking about cryptocurrency. Like, that's feasible. He does talk about it. Like
Dogecoin, like all these, he's done that before. So what this does is it's capitalizing on Elon Musk fanboys, crypto bros, and like dudes who aren't, and it's trying to capitalize on the hype of this launch, because there is a bit of hype in this community, and just getting people to, without really thinking about it, fucking scan the QR code and away you go. And it's what's fucking wild is that this is obviously a different, if I Google SpaceX, there are still a bunch of these hanging up. Like, I don't know how is YouTube allowing this? How is YouTube allowing this?
Yeah. Meanwhile, I use 3 seconds of a Miley Cyrus song, and they're like, your video's been taken down for copyright violation, you fucking prick. We're going to get you. That's a strike against you, your community guidelines, you prick. Meanwhile, these guys have built a multi-million-dollar following on ripping off YouTube users for millions of dollars. And they're like, yeah, seems fine. Seems good to me. Me too.
And because it's a live video, I guess, it's probably pops up in the search results more.
Yeah, maybe.
Like literally, like there's one right now where it's the same video we were just watching with the scam, but all they've done is, obviously the previous channel's probably been shut down by YouTube, and they've just created a new channel and just doing the same thing. And 12,000 people are watching it right now. It's fucking
you
insane.
see something SpaceX, you look at it, it's live, you just click on it, no one's validating whether it's like actually SpaceX. It looks like a real channel. It's got followers, it's got 10,000 people looking at it live. It must be the real deal. Like, why would you think to question it?
So that's the first time I've seen, I think, a scam at this scale happening.
It's so sophisticated.
In the moment of a live thing happening. I haven't seen
scheduled at
like
the same time as the thing that you're expecting. Like, it ticks.
And they were pushing back, like as they were pushing back the launch window, the scam was also pushing back their launch video. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's roughly matching. I think they just ended up hitting go on it because
we just need to get some money going.
What was happening was the daylight difference in the videos was changing, so they had to like, I guess launch it or something, or maybe there was enough people watching they thought, fuck it, there's enough of a pool here to draw from, let's go. Insane. So that blew my mind, the sophistication of that scam.
I haven't seen this reported out anywhere, have you? Like, this is just something we happen to catch live.
No.
It's wild.
I mean, I'm sure there's probably like some tech articles and people blogging about it, but it's not front page, again, of the Herald Sun.
No.
I wonder I wonder whether this is, I'm assuming the money just goes into a scam and then you never see the money again.
Into someone's Bitcoin wallet and you never see it again. Yeah. The end.
But
it's a pretty straightforward scam, is you send me money and you get nothing.
Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, crazy times.
So if you feel like sending us money, go to our Patreon at.
We have a Patreon.
It seems like a lot of people have got, just Bitcoin burning a hole in their pockets right at the moment. So, on that note, we have been, we are, we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web at unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and mother flipping TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at George Tsipos.
You can follow me down to the Bitcoin mines where I will be donating money to double in my investment, George.
And they call it a mine. Thanks for listening, guys. I love your faces. We'll see you next week.